You're gonna do sound check.
Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2 3.
Good morning and welcome to Planning Committee meeting for March 18th, 2025. All electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. It's a pretty nice day out, so let's hope that we can get through this as quickly and efficiently as possible. So as we have quorum present, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:30 in the morning. In chambers with me is Councillor McMeekin, Cassard, Beattie, Kretsch, and Councillor Maureen Wilson. Online is Councillor Matt Francis and Councillor Alex Wilson. So let's get this party started. Clerk Kelsey, are there any addendum items to this agenda?
Yes, Chair Wang, we do have some additions under delegations. We have added 6.1, Phil Pothen with the environmental defense respecting permit reform process, which is item 10.1. Under public hearings, 8.1, application for zoning bylaw amendment for 420 Career Drive. We have an added staff presentation. 8.2, we have added written submissions, and it's for an application for official plan amendment for lands located at 804 to 816 King Street West. Written submissions, item 1 through 5, as well as an added staff presentation. And under motions, under 10.1 permit reform process, we have an added written submission from Anthony Salemi with the West End Home Builders Association. And under notices of motion, we have added 11.2, Hamilton Heritage Property Grant Program Application Criteria Exception for the property municipally addressed as 2295 Troy Road, Flamborough, the former Troy School.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda as presented? So asking committee if there's any additional. All right, seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda to be approved as presented? Councillor Beattie, Councillor Kretsch. Show of hands, please. And that's, oh, Councillor Taddison is here. Great, awesome. That looks like it's everyone. Let's move on to declarations of interest. Members of committee, are there any declarations of interest? Pausing for dramatic effect. All right, seeing none, let's move on to approval of minutes. So may I please have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes from February 25th, 2025, please. Councillor Cassar, Councillor Beattie. Anything? Nope. Show of hands, please. And that's everyone. Thank you. So we are now moving on to delegations. The very first one is 6.1, Phil Pothen from Environmental Defense respecting permit reform process, item 10.1. Phil, you're not a newbie to this, so I think you know the drill, which is 4 minutes, there's a ding, 5 minutes, I start to gesture wildly and hope that you finish up, so then that way you can stop talking. So anyway, all right, Phil, anytime you're ready.
All right, good morning, councillors. My name is Phil Pothen, and I'm the lawyer, Ontario Environment Program Manager, and the Land Use and Land Development Program Manager with the national charity Environmental Defense. I'm here to speak in support of item 10.1, which is Councillor Maureen Wilson's motion to reform permitting. For at least 4 years now, there's been an overwhelming public consensus in Hamilton in favor of accommodating your city's growth in denser, more labor-efficient formats within your existing neighborhoods, on existing streets, sidewalks, and sewers, rather than through greenfield sprawl. Hamilton Council listened to that message, first of all, by adopting an official plan which refused to squander scarce construction capacity on even more inefficient greenfield sprawl that wouldn't be viable to build at prices middle-class families could afford, and wouldn't be viable to build at all today under these straitened economic circumstances. And Hamilton instead pledged to overhaul its zoning rules and planning processes to deliver more than 80% of the city's future housing within existing neighborhoods. Passing that official plan was the right thing to do, not just for the environment, but also, and arguably more importantly for many Hamiltonians, it was the only approach capable of keeping up with housing demand, increasing housing output without a massive increased supply of labor. And today, it's the only approach capable of maintaining or restoring housing output in these tougher economic times. I'm here to support the councillor's motion because passing that official plan was only the first part of delivering on that choice. And unfortunately, in part because the provincial government initially overturned that official plan and only restored it with changes to the Planning Act that seemed calculated to help land speculators undermine it and the grand bargain behind it, Hamilton Council and this committee have not yet completed the streamlining of approval processes and the reform of substantive zoning that are required to make the shift in housing types and the opening up of existing neighborhoods to labor-efficient infill housing viable. It is because Hamilton hasn't yet actually implemented the firm urban boundary option, and it's because Hamilton hasn't really been allowed to until recently, that Hamilton's approval times are now estimated to be last among the 23 municipalities in estimated approval times, but also that housing output is not really performing. So I want to reiterate what experts like us and Hamilton residents told councillors back in 2021. There is no way for Hamilton to meet its housing need, including the need for family-sized homes, without shifting the bulk of the new construction to existing residential streets, including a large number of streets that have always been off limits for denser forms of housing and mid-rise buildings. So part of that, and that's the part that Councillor Wilson is moving forward today with, is about reforming the process for approving those infill developments. And so this is right. These are things that we recommend in our mid-rise manual report. It's called, if you want to visit legalizemidrise.ca, you'll see that we expressly recommend curtailing the formal consultation processes for these types of mid-rise infill developments, simplifying site plan control, simplifying engineering reviews, altering the timeline and the point at which conditional building permits are required, changing the submission requirements. These are all things that we recommended at the start and that are in our mid-rise manual report to get the type of housing that Hamilton needs built. But I want to also say that this motion and these changes are themselves only part of the puzzle. Hamilton has committed to creating new residential zones within currently low-rise areas, and one of those is the so-called mid-rise zone. And that process seems to be moving very slowly and without the kind of urgency that, for example, the City of Toronto has applied. And so we would urge you to pass this motion, but also to accelerate the residential zones plan to get it done now, this year, finally, with as-of-right permission to build mid-rise housing on all major residential streets. Any street where you see a bus running, you should be allowed to build a 6-story mid-rise building without anything except for a building permit application.
Thank you, Phil. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm now opening up the speakers list for any questions for our delegate. And just a reminder that questions are for clarification purposes only and not for debate. Okay, no questions. Thank you so much, Phil. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive this delegation, please? Councillor Maureen Wilson and Councillor Crutch. And a show of hands, please. And Councillor Taddison, are you in or are you out? He's in. Awesome. So we're all in. Thank you very much. We have a great day, Phil.
You too.
So we are on to 7.1. PED 25065, the appeal of draft plan for subdivision applications 25T-3 202102 to the Ontario Land Tribunal for lack of decision for lands located at 370, 378, 412, and 436 Garner Road, East Ancaster, Ward 12. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive this item, and then we'll go into discussion. Councillor Cassar and Councillor Beatty. Discussion on 7.1, please. Councillor Cassar, please.
Thanks, Chair. Maybe if I could just ask staff for just a brief overview of why this application is at the state it's in and it's being appealed. I noticed in the report there was 12, 13 different reasons and maybe more. If we could just have a quick overview verbally. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Hi, Jennifer Caterino, Area Planning Manager, West Development Team. So through the chair, this application has been appealed for a lack of decision. Staff have reviewed 4 submissions of the application, and the applicant has since appealed. We do have a couple concerns from a planning perspective. They are mainly regarding access to the woodlot, wetland compensation, and servicing from an engineering perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on this particular item? Okay. Seeing none, we will vote by hands to receive this presentation. To receive the report, sorry, yes. Okay, and that, Councillor Crutch, looks like everyone. Councillor McMeekin, are you good? Are you good too? Excellent, so that looks like everyone. All right. We are now going to move on to item 8, which is public hearings. The public has been advised on how to pre-register to be a delegate at public meetings on today's agenda. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of council, City of Hamilton to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Hamilton before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Hamilton before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there is reasonable grounds to do so. So, moving on to 8.1, we are going to speak about PED 25073, application for a zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 420 Crerar Drive. Crerar Drive in Ward 7. We do have Spencer Skidmore here if committee would like to see the presentation. All right, so may I have a mover and a seconder to waive the staff presentation, please? Councillor Crutch and Councillor Alex Wilson. And show of hands to waive the presentation. And that looks like everyone. Thank you. So we are going to ask Edward John from Landwise. I see him in the crowd today to come on down. You are the agent for this. So come on down, Mr. John. Nice to have you back.
Good morning, everybody. Edward John, Principal Planner and Partner at Landwise. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be back before you. Today, I will be discussing the application at 420 Crerar Drive. It is a mouthful. I'll give that to you, Councillor Wang. While this is a relatively straightforward application, it does bring with it some exciting opportunities to the neighborhood through reinvigorating an existing institutional use. Today with me in the audience, I have David Sebastianuti, Facilities Committee Chair, and Board Member Mark Sebastianuti. And virtually we have Robert Scallion available for questions should that be necessary. In terms of some organizational background, obviously a great community organization with a tremendous track record here in Hamilton. While I'll provide some time at the end of the presentation should David or Mark wish to speak, I'm sure many of you are aware of the organization's track record. They contribute significantly to charitable endeavors, provide affordable housing through its housing corporation, and supports communities through a variety of well-supported and executed initiatives. Through this application, they will seek to continue this great work and legacy for the community. I won't spend too much time on the existing site conditions. Obviously, it's a former school, two-story school, and the intent is to reoccupy the building with various activities. In terms of community context, it is nestled in a residential neighborhood surrounded by some other institutional and commercial uses, but predominantly grade-related residential. Most notably, we have the Teachers building next door to us and the church off Stone Church Road. Once again, I won't spend too long on the designations. Obviously, neighborhoods in the official plan, Urban Hamilton official plan, and with regards to the zoning, it is the institutional I2 with the proposal to introduce one additional use of a private lodge to that zoning. And as seen in this slide, there's a definition of the private lodge. It is essentially to be added to the range of existed uses already there. And just moving on quickly, introducing the private club or lodge will allow sons and daughters to centralize operations, provide more services, operate a cultural center and community hub where members can have gatherings, charity fundraisers, offer programming, and amenities such as exercise classes, social or educational workshops for seniors and for sons and daughter members. This will allow the existing building to be repurposed and revitalized that may have otherwise stayed vacant or demolished for alternative uses. The building is proposed to house several programs. A daycare operated by the YW has been in place as it is allowed as of right. Other programs proposed include ones for Villa Italia residents, young adults with disabilities, support for families impacted by Down syndrome, and connecting to others to services and counseling services. As previously mentioned, very minor changes to the building are proposed. Generally, it is just within the realm of window and door upgrades, a few new entrances, the relocation of an external stair, and then internal renovations. I won't spend too long on the elevation, very straightforward, really just to highlight the minor nature of those changes. In terms of the public consultation, we did host a public consultation meeting where invitations were sent to 118 surrounding neighbors. We had about 15 attendees, including the ward councillor, Councillor Pauls, and Spencer Skidmore, the planner responsible for the application. It should be noted that well attended, the majority of folks in attendance were supportive and interested in the programming opportunities with the facility. That being said, the general themes from the public who raised concerns included increased traffic and disturbance from attendees when a sporting event may take place. I hear the buzzer, so I'll go a little bit more brief. Obviously, we have support from the trip generation letter, which speaks to the nature of the use and the movements of transportation. In terms of the comment response, I think most notably when it came to some concerns from parking, I do want to draw attention to an informal shared parking agreement that sons and daughters were able to secure with the surrounding institutional uses. This allows on various days where those activities may expand beyond the 49 spaces to access up to 177 spaces. Obviously, through some changes to the building, there are obviously some bicycle spots. And the other piece is the ability for sons and daughters to implement crowd control and parking plans. So in those events that may be larger, obviously having volunteers to assist with educating those new residents on expectations and particularly with related to noise. And with that, I conclude on the second buzzer. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Speakers list is open. If there's any speakers. Councillor Cossar, can you take the chair? I have a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just wanted to understand, this sounds really great because it's a adaptive it's a reuse of an existing building with some minor changes. Is there any opportunity to look at climate adaptation type renovations? Has that been thought about or approached or any of that?
Through the chair to the councillor, certainly we can look at it. As I mentioned, very minor changes to the building, but this first hurdle of getting the zoning in place, they are continuing to explore the new uses and then also what the building can accommodate. So I know there are some plans for improvements, and certainly with that climate piece too, in terms of the lands, we can work with the architect through the building permit process to see what's achievable.
Okay. My second question then through you, Chair, is I did see that there was a little bit of residential uses, so it would be a long-term care facility or seniors. What was the villa?
Yeah, through the chair to the council, it was programming for their existing residents. So it's off-site programming that through a range of different uses. So no residential uses on site. It really is that programming which allows them to provide that to some of the residents in other areas of Hamilton.
Excellent, thank you. Those are all my questions, Chair. I will take back the chair. Any other questions for Mr. Johns at all? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your delegation. Oh, wait. You are in support of the staff recommendation, correct?
How did I fail to say that? I am in support of the staff recommendation. Yes, I am. And thank you to staff.
Thank you. All right. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive this delegation from the agent, Councillor Beattie and Councillor Cossar. Again, it's a show of hands, please. And that looks like everyone. Thank you. We are now moving on to asking members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? And for a third time, oh, Councillor Pauls, you missed it. But we all liked it. Oh yeah, we like the sons and daughters of Italy. Well, we're asking for public. So the last time is, are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Okay, seeing none. May I have a mover and a seconder for one, that the public submissions in the staff report were received and considered by committee, and two, that the public meeting be closed. Councillor McMeekin, Councillor Pauls. This is an e-scribe vote, so may I have your vote electronically, please? And the vote is up. And that vote carries 10-0. Thank you. Now we are moving on to approving of the report recommendation. So first I'll ask for a mover and a seconder before we actually go to comments. So may I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Pauls and Councillor Beattie. Excellent. So Councillor Pauls, are you ready to make any comments?
Thank you. I rushed here. I just had another meeting at the police station, so I was there. But anyways, I just want to say that the neighborhood there is all excited about this because it's going to be a club. It's exciting that something's new there. And I talked to so many of them, and even at our open house, people were looking forward to what's happening on the Monday. As you all know, it was a school, right? So now it's going to be an Italian club, Sons of Italy, so it's great. So I just want to say I support this 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers or commenters on this? So seeing none, may I have your electronic vote on 420 the beautiful new building, apparently. Vote is up. And that vote carries 10-0. Thank you. We are now moving on to 8.2, which is PED 25067, application for the official plan amendment for lands located at 804 to 816 King Street West in Ward 1. We do have Planner Eldon here. If committee would like to see the Yamna. Planner Yamna is here. So if committee would like to see the presentation, and committee would, so if you can come on down and
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, staff, and public in attendance. My name is Yomna Sarak Eldon. I'm the Senior Planner with the Development Planning Division West team, and I will be discussing the official plan amendment application for the lands located at 804 to 816 King Street West. So staff are recommending approval of the official plan amendment application, which would effectively permit the development of a 6-story mixed-use building containing 68 dwelling units, approximately 290 square meters of commercial space on the ground floor, and 19 surface parking spaces. The purpose of the application is to amend the site-specific policy area J within the Ainsley Wood Westdale secondary plan to increase the permitted maximum density from 176 residential dwelling units per gross hectare to 380 residential dwelling units.
Sorry. It's not on the screen.
That's okay. Is it not?
No, it didn't work. There we go. My apologies.
No, that's okay. Okay. So the subject site is located on the northeast corner of King Street West and Paradise Road North. The site is rectangular in shape with frontage along King Street West and Paradise Road North and a total land area of 0.17 hectares. The site can be accessed from Paradise Road North, and it is currently occupied by 2 one-story commercial buildings and a surface parking area. The location map, this is location map showing the official plan designation of the subject site and surrounding properties. The application for the official plan amendment is to modify site-specific policy area J within the Ainsley Wood Westdale secondary plan to increase the permitted maximum density. Staff are in support of this modification as the applicant has demonstrated that the modifications would not have any adverse impacts to the proposed development and the surrounding area. This is the concept plan as proposed by the applicant. In this concept plan, the existing commercial buildings are proposed to be demolished and replaced with a 6-story mixed-use building. Oh. It's not. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Yes, okay. Sorry about that. Here we have the ground floor plan showing the commercial units along King Street West frontage, including the lobby and residential amenity space. The bike parking and car parking, including the loading space, are located at the rear of the site. This is the elevation drawings of the proposed development. So this would be the view from King Street West looking north, and here we have a view of the rear of the building looking south. This is a view of the western facade, and here we have a view of the eastern facade. Okay, so now we will take a photo tour of the subject site and the surrounding area. So in this photo, we're looking southeast at the subject site from Paradise Road North. Here we're looking southeast from Paradise Street North at the subject site and properties across the street from the subject site. Here we're looking northeast at the subject lands from King Street West. And as a part of the planning process, a notice of complete application was published in the newspaper on December 18, 2024, and a notice of public meeting was sent to property owners within 120 meters of the subject site on March 7, 2025. Until this date, we've received 5 written submissions from the public with concerns pertaining to parking supply, waste management, construction management, building heights, and stepbacks. The applicant has received 1 written correspondence seeking additional information regarding construction timing. So in closing, the proposed official plan application can be supported as it is consistent with the provincial planning statement and meets the general intent and purpose of the Urban Hamilton official plan and the Ainsley Wood Westdale secondary plan, subject to the adoption of this amendment. This concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers list is open. Councillor Maureen Wilson, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to Senior Planner Sarag Eldon for your work and your presentation today. Just a few questions. Full disclosure, Chair, I voted in support of this application when it was originally on our docket in 2021, I believe. But the correspondence that is on our agenda today and some conversations in community, I think an opportunity with the presentation to provide some clarification, an opportunity to seek clarification on their behalf. So in summary, the OPA was triggered as a consequence of an increase in density. That increase in density is a consequence of just a different internal configuration. Can you just once again confirm, please, through the chair?
Yes, of course. So the project has gone in, through interior building layout changes, and so that modified the building and increased the number of dwelling units to 68, but the overall number of bedroom decreases to 88. With a mix of studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom units. So as a result of these interior changes, the proposed density is increased from the previous application.
Thank you. And just there's some questions as a consequence of kind of what you're able to capture just on flat paper as opposed to a visual presentation. If you can confirm that the step backs are consistent and with that which was originally approved, please, and through the chair.
Yes, so I can confirm that no changes to the setbacks and setbacks approved by council in April 2021 have been proposed.
Okay, thank you. Could you please, there are some concerns and questions about parking. May I ask you to just confirm what was previously approved and any daylight between that and what is proposed now, through the chair?
Certainly. So the previously approved parking was for 20 spaces, and now the approval is for 19 parking spaces. So a future minor variance would allow for the parking to align with the current parking regulations of bylaw 05200. So at the time of the previous OPA and ZBA approvals, they had parking provisions in place in that approved zoning bylaw that were before the changes that were made to the current bylaw. And so the current bylaw would allow for this proposed change up to 19 parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. The previous parking allotment was in accordance with that which set out the requirements. The zoning has changed, and under this zoning provision, that which is being provided in this proposal is supported in that. Could you help maybe speak to how do you reconcile we're increasing density, but we're not enhancing the number of parking spaces?
Certainly. So I could speak to the matter of this is a mixed-use application within the medium density residential area, and so density is encouraged, and it's on a primary corridor. So there's transit proposed, and there's existing transit along King Street West and Paradise Road North, and so this can accommodate the proposed increase in density as well as their transportation planning staff are in support of the OPA and have reviewed the submitted transportation reports.
Thank you, through the chair. Just on that last point, there was a question from a resident that they wanted to see a traffic impact study done. And I think if I've understood what you've just said, there was a consideration of that in the previous proposal, and traffic staff have articulated no concerns with this revised density with respect to parking. Can I just get confirmation of that?
So the transportation impact study that has been revised with this application has been approved by transportation planning.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
If I could pivot to when and how any concerns with the impact of development might take place. Dust, heavy trucks that will be required to bring in supplies for the build. Could you speak to that component through the chair?
So the construction management portion of the application will be dealt with at the existing site plan approvals application that is in place and has been approved conditionally. They will continue to work through that to address construction management concerns.
Thank you. So concerns such as when construction takes place is regulated, concerns about materials that dust, et cetera, mud, all of those things have to be managed according to city standards. Can I just get a public confirmation?
Yes, that is correct.
I really appreciate your thoroughness and the clear answers you've provided today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, one more. Councillor Kretsch, please.
Thanks. I had a really quick question for you, specific to the mention of the Committee of Adjustment. And so we passed a motion earlier in this term of council to say, if a planning file comes here and there's subsequently a wish to make a minor variance, the minor variance comes back here. So I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly, because there haven't been too many instances where that's been the case, but I'm not sure if we're monitoring those or making sure that those come back to the Planning Committee instead of the Committee of Adjustment. So maybe the question isn't for you specifically, but perhaps somebody else who was here during that motion was passed, either General Manager Robichaud or Chief Planner Fayback, to answer what that process will look like.
Through the chair to the councillor, staff are just in the final stages of preparing that report back. So there has been monitoring in terms of, and if I recall the motion, it was related to, should there be some decisions that should come to Planning Committee as opposed to the Committee of Adjustment? Just trying to go back in my mind. So staff are working on preparing that response. In terms of, sorry, I'm just trying to recall your question. Maybe you could repeat it just to make sure that I respond accordingly.
Yeah, so I think I was the mover of the motion. The intention of that motion was that any minor variances sought at the Committee of Adjustment that were related to a planning file that was decided on here would come back here. And hopefully, I think there was also some suggestion of a synergy if it was possible to bring those minor variances at the time that we approved applications or went through a site plan or other kinds of approvals, we would do so. But obviously, sometimes that can't happen. But the goal being sometimes there are applications that aren't here for our deliberation at all because they're just matters of fact. And then, of course, those things would go to Committee of Adjustment. We'd never see them. So just for those that we do make decisions on. So I guess I was looking for the time horizon on would this development be subject to that? And you've said that it's coming forward soon, so I'm imagining it would be.
Through the chair to the councillor, that's correct. Yeah, the intent is to report back over the next a couple of months on that. So we could discuss options, and the report will look at what options could be considered by Planning Committee in terms of those situations.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
Councillor Maureen Wilson, please.
Thanks to my colleague, Councillor Crutch. And I think what I failed to do is to try and publicly platform for residents who are concerned and interested. Could you just walk us through, with respect to the minor variance, like what is the process that has to be, like what is the process for that consideration through the chair?
Through the chair, are you just to clarify?
Parking.
Sorry?
Parking?
Yes, so just to clarify your question, are you asking about the minor variance process in general or just?
For this particular
For this
file,
particular,
through the
so because their existing zoning is more restrictive than the zoning with the current bylaw, they would need the minor variance to take that out of their existing zoning to then comply with the city's zoning bylaw, city-wide bylaw. If Reno would like to comment on the process.
Reno Dalbello, Acting Director of Development Planning. Through the chair to the councillor, with regards to the minor variance application, the process itself, the applicant would apply for the minor variance, and in consultation with the planner on the file and our planning staff and our community services planning staff, we will look at that application and making sure it does fall within the policies that are being looked at for this application. There are the 4 tests for it that we follow. We make sure that those 4 tests are followed for this application. But this application will be looked at through this application and the actual site plan itself too, making sure that we make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted so that the policies are followed. That will be the process. It's not necessarily a standalone application,
okay,
but it will be in consultation with looking at this application and the recommendation coming from this committee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to this or questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, Senior Planner. I need a mover and a seconder to receive her presentation. Councillor Maureen Wilson and Councillor Crutch. Hand vote, please. And that's everyone. Thank you. We do have James Webb with Webb Planning Consultants in attendance today. James, come on down to the podium. And James, you're also not a newbie here, so you know the drill, right? So
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of committee, ladies and gentlemen. James Webb, I'm not a newbie, professional land use planner representing Gateway Development Group. And to be absolutely clear, there is a prior application and a new application on the property. The corporate name remains the same, but the ownership has changed. Just anticipating some questions that may arise with respect to that. I do have a very brief presentation I'd like to provide some context and my commentary, my opinion in support of this application. We do accept and endorse the recommendation that's been put forward by planning staff, and I'm here today to essentially assist committee should any questions arise, to assist them in their decision-making process. So as you're aware, there was a prior development application that went through a very rigorous and extensive planning review process. There was an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, the outcome of which was approval of a 6-story building, 31 dwelling units, 122 bedrooms, effectively marketed at the time as a student housing specific project, 4 and 5 bedroom units. The zoning regulations that were adopted at the time were also very specific based on what was regarded at the time as determining, yes, this is an appropriate intensification. The second layer to intensification is to ensure that new building is compatible with the neighborhood in terms of its relationship. We're on the periphery and immediately abutting the interior of a stable residential neighborhood. So that zoning bylaw provided very specific regulations with regards to setbacks, maximum building height, and step backs. The project was approved through that planning process, and the owner at the time then proceeded to apply for and obtain conditional site plan approval for essentially the same development project, but at that stage, the project then went idle. My client, Anthony Quattraccio from the Yoke Group, subsequently has acquired the company and is now very much a motivated builder to proceed with the redevelopment. At the outset of his review, undertaking pro formas, they decided to reformat the interior of the building, and I stress it's an interior change only. The resulting outcome is a new building with 68 dwelling units in total, 88 bedrooms based on a mix of 1 and 2 and studio units. There is a component of affordable housing under the CMHC program, so it's true affordable housing, and that'll be 10% of the unit total. As I said, we're maintaining the envelope in terms of building within the massing that was previously contemplated by this planning committee, compliance with all of those applicable regulations. In support of the application that we submitted to the city, as you heard from the file planner, we did produce a traffic impact study to further review and identify potential impacts and the parking requirement that results from the minor change. We also produced a site servicing analysis to demonstrate that there's adequate services to accommodate the development proposal. And we will shortly, ultimately subject to the outcome today, be then pursuing an application for a revision to that conditionally approved site plan. These are the elevations from the prior development proposal. I put this up only to stress what you see on the plan is the articulation of the building, the manner in which it steps from its front lot line, its rear lot line, and side lot lines. Those were the detailed considerations that were granted through the prior review to make sure that the building would in fact be respectful of the surrounding context. The development proposal essentially maintains a lot of the same principles. The access remains at the same location off North Paradise Road North. The building is closely oriented to King Street. There is at-grade commercial units. The current plan is for 2 units. Total GFA quite similar to what was previously proposed. And all parking is now provided at grade. And that's really the fundamental change. The prior building did include below-grade parking, but the amount of parking spaces that resulted from that and the cost of that was exorbitant. And that's the reason why the developer has done that reformatting of the at-grade conditions. 1 minute. There's a colored elevation showing what's new. So again, Lintac Architects has remained on the file as the project architect. They've been using this time over the past year to further articulate the design in terms of its materiality, colors. You see a lot of glazing at the upper roof level. Come on. Please go back. Doesn't want to go back. The rendering that we've provided shows that, in fact, what they've achieved through the building design respects the prior considerations and very closely follows the same intent, which is really to introduce a building that respects 2 key objectives: intensification along the primary transit corridor and a scale and a massing that respects the surrounding neighborhood. So with that, Madam Chair, it's my submission that the proposal that's before you today is appropriate. We respectfully request that committee adopt a recommendation from planning staff on the basis that we've appropriately responded to the planning issues through this review. We've paid attention to the input from the neighborhood, and through some of the questions we've heard that a lot of those issues will in fact be addressed through the subsequent site plan process. So with that, Madam Chair, pleased to assist committee with any questions.
Perfect, thank you. I know you said it right at the very beginning, but you are in support of the staff recommendation?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Awesome. And speakers list is open. I recognize Councillor Maureen Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Planner Webb. I think a single question, if you could just go back to the remark you made about the affordable housing component and unpack that a little bit through the Chair.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the project is subscribing to the CMHC program for affordable housing. There are checklists, there are benchmarks that the development proposal has to achieve. They have made application for the benefit of that program, and their cap is at a 10% ratio of the total number of dwelling units will then fall into that category. So it's true affordable housing as defined by CMHC. It's not, affordable relative to Toronto. It's affordable relative to the local market conditions.
I understand. So just so I fully understand through the chair that that application has been made and that application, that provision has been secured through the chair.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, that they have made the appropriate submissions to CMHC. They've been confirmed as qualifying, obviously subject to the completion of the site plan approval process and going through the building permit fundamentals, but the commitment from the developer is to include that component.
Okay, thank you.
Any other speakers, questions for Mr. Webb? Councillor Kassar, can you take the chair? Just a question on the ground floor commercial units. Did you just say there's 2 commercial units? I do see in the report, and I know we're not there yet, but I thought I heard 2. I just don't know.
Through you, Madam Chair, there are in fact 2. The site plan has been evolving. At one point in time, all the commercial space was consolidated into 1 unit. Now there are presently 2. Again, it's about massaging the floor plate as we prepare to resubmit for a site plan because we need to balance against bike storage, storage requirements, garbage requirements, so all of those issues. But there is a commitment to include commercial space at the ground floor. And if I may, I was remiss. I do owe a word of thanks to planning staff for getting us here today. The application has been processed within the timelines. Yumna's done an excellent job and extend our appreciation for that. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Just a question on those commercial spaces. What is the potential for those commercial spaces? What is the ideal sort of tenant that would be in those commercial spaces as per the owner sort of thought process? No idea.
Madam Chair, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you on that. I know that, the Yoke Group are a local company. They are experts in commercial tenancies. They do have a roster of existing clients. I know that they are already speaking to them, so it could be arranged. Westdale, as a commercial precinct, has been evolving. At one point, there was, a fabulous range, and now it seems to be, much reduced. So they will be looking hard to secure an appropriate tenant.
Okay, thank you. I can take back the chair then. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Webb, for your delegation. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive this delegation from the agent? Councillor Kassar and Councillor Maureen Wilson, please. And this is a hand vote. May I have your votes, please? Looks like everyone. Thank you. At this time, are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Are there any members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? And for a third time, yes, please come on down, sir. Come on down, just down to the podium. Sal or Mateen will be getting your contact information, but you do have 5 minutes to delegate. There is a 4-minute, at the 4-minute mark, you'll hear a ding, and then you'll have a minute left, and then I'll start to gesture wildly to make sure you finish up. Okay, so may I have your name, please?
Is it on the mic?
Yes, it's on now, yes.
My name is Margaret Kamath. I live very close to the Upper Paradise on Glen Road. We would be affected by this particular construction. One of the things that has really been concerning for all of us is the parking areas, because during the recent snowstorm, there was so much of parking, I could not take my car out. And essentially, it is not belonging to anybody on the street. Must be somewhere else. Just wondering if that aspect, that the parking has been adequately addressed, although the number of units has increased, but I don't see the number of parking spots increase. In fact, it has decreased from 20 to 19, if I heard it right. So that is my main concern. And essentially, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for this particular delegate at all? Okay. Councillor Maureen Wilson, please.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I I didn't hear your name.
Yeah, Mark.
Mark.
K-A-M-A-T-H.
Thank you for coming out this morning. So just to summarize, you're noting that we're increasing the density,
Yes.
but we're losing one parking spot.
Yes.
And the recent snow events in February have underscored some of the challenges that come with that. Is that a good summation?
Yeah, that's a decent summation, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. My other question to you, sir, is did I appropriately ask, in your opinion, the question of staff to reconcile that condition in that we're increasing the density, we're losing a parking spot? How can that be? Their response to me was, it's in accordance to the policies and the permissions we have set out. Is there anything else you would like me to ask staff to clarify on that?
When you say policy, what does it mean? How can you park more cars if the tenants there are more number of people? How would that really reconcile?
Okay. I think I will take that notation, and I will ask staff when it's appropriate to further unpack that on our behalf. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of this particular delegate? Thank you very much, sir, for coming down. All right, I will ask for the third time, are there any other members of the public that wish to speak at this public meeting? Okay. Sal, do you need to go get his contact information? Okay, great. Thank you very much. So now I've asked 3 times, so may I have a mover and a seconder for 1, that the public submissions regarding this matter were received and considered by committee, and 2, that this public meeting is closed. Councillor Kassar and Councillor McMeekin. Excellent. This is an e-scribe vote, so may I please have your vote electronically? Oh, we're going to go on to the approval and report recommendations. So we're just closing off the public meeting right now. Okay, so the vote is up. And that carries 10-0, thank you. So now we are moving on to the report recommendation. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder first, and then we'll open it up for questions. So Councillor Maureen Wilson and Councillor Alex Wilson. Now, Councillor Maureen Wilson, I suspect you have some questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. Out of respect and honor of the time that was taken by the resident to come down, and I'd like to see if I can do a better job of trying to unpack the framework of how decisions and permissions are granted with respect to parking. So I think a question was asked of like what policies, what regime are we talking about when we're talking about determination of parking requirements? If I could, through you, to ask the appropriate staff person to maybe paint a picture of what that looks like, those permissions and that policy, through the chair.
Senior planner, please.
Through the chair, thank you. So the parking regulations are within the site-specific zoning bylaw for the subject site, and they were granted in April 2021. The city has reviewed their parking requirements after that permissions were granted, and so the proposed parking will be addressed at a minor variance stage to allow for the current zoning to be in place rather than the previously approved zoning that is more restrictive. That's my comment.
Through the chair to the councillor, just following up on that. So as noted, the existing site-specific requires a higher parking standard than what our current zoning bylaw permits. So as you all recall, there was a review and updated and revised parking regulations that were brought forward. So the intent would be to apply the new standards to this development, which would result in a different rate, but would be consistent with what is currently required for all new developments.
Thank you. That's really helpful. If I could ask, what are some of the overall city objectives that we're trying to secure within this policy and permissions through the chair?
Through the chair to the councillor, the new parking standards were applied geographically. So the closer I would say you are to accessibility to transit, the lower the parking standard is, to encourage the use of public transit, to encourage other modes of transportation such as cycling, walking, and then as you geographically move away from that transit, the parking rates are a little bit higher in order to accommodate the fact that there's less opportunity to perhaps use transit. The new standards do require visitor parking because we note that that is important for visitors so they don't have to seek out parking, but that visitor parking would be provided on site. So it's really, and also the new standards are to allow the market to determine what is required rather than a standard. So, it would be based on the needs of future residents of that building rather than a parking standard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for unpacking that, both of you. My second question is the comment that was made by the developer's agent with respect to affordable housing in accordance with Canadian mortgage housing guidelines. I'm just wondering if anyone can speak to what does that process look like for, I think the agent said that upon receipt of a building permit, that would bring closure to their process and the corporation would deem it to be verifiable and therefore would sort of grant that funding, but I'm unsure if there's anyone who could speak to that today, painting that roadmap of permissions.
Through the chair to the councillor, I don't have all the specifics. I have touched base with the agent who's indicated that they could provide some more detailed information following the planning committee, but my understanding is the owner has applied for funding. And so part of excuse me, part of that funding would be moving through the development process to ensure that they've met all the requirements in terms of approvals from the municipality in order to be given that funding. But as I said, Mr. Webb has indicated that he will follow up with some additional information that he will share with me, which I can share with planning committee following planning committee today.
Thank you. You just answered my secondary question, which was how can we be held accountable in reporting whether that was secured or not? What does public disclosure on this look like? And what is our obligation, if anything, as a board? Through the chair.
Through the chair to the councillor, I don't have that answer with me at the moment, but as I said, following planning committee, I can look into that and provide an update to all members.
Okay, and then I'll translate that publicly after. That's my commitment to the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on this report? Seeing as we have a mover and a seconder, may I have your vote, please, on eScribe? And the vote is up. That vote carries 10-0. Thank you. We are now moving on to item 9, which is items for consideration. 9.1 is PED 25110, Notice of Owner's Request to Repeal a Designation Bylaw Number 95-67-67 for 2295 Troy Road, Flamborough. This is the former Troy School, under Section 32 of the Ontario Heritage Act. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations in the report? Councillor Cassar and Councillor McMeekin, please. Any discussion on item 9.1? Councillor Cassar, please.
Thank you. Just request a verbal overview from staff, please.
Through the chair, Alyssa Golden, Cultural Heritage Program Lead. This report is essentially administrative, so the Ontario Heritage Act requires municipality to give notice when we receive a request from an owner to repeal a designation bylaw. We did not have the delegated authority from council for staff to just issue this notice. So that's why this report was required. This is the first time we've received this type of owner-specific request since the Ontario Heritage Act was amended a few years ago. So the language of the recommendations in this report would allow staff to process these moving forward and not have to bring this forward first. So no decision is being made in regard to this request. It's simply the direction to be able to give the required notice, receive any objections that might be received, and take those into account when we report back through Heritage Committee in the coming months.
Yeah, thank you very much for that overview. And just to speak to the property that's covered in the report, Troy Women's Institute in Troy, very beautiful historic building, which has been designated a long time ago. And there's a financial hurdle for restoration that the Institute has encountered, and they're unable to foot the cost for the restoration of the wood siding. So that's the reason I've been in touch with, or working with staff over the past few months on this topic. And because it's a financial hurdle we're trying to overcome, there's a notice of motion that helps to deal with that, but we'll get to that later on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, speakers on this particular item? Okay, seeing none. We have a mover and a seconder, so may I have your vote, please, electronically? Vote is up. That vote carries 10-0. Thank you. We are now moving on to 9.2, which is the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee minutes for Report 25002 from February 28th. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive the minutes and approve the recommendations therein? Councillor Kassar and Councillor Jamie Huang, I will second. Any discussion on 9.2, please? Okay, seeing none, may I have your vote electronically, please? Vote is up. That vote carries 10-0. Thank you. We are now moving on to motions. 10.1 is permit reform process. Councillor Maureen Wilson, could you please introduce your motion, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm just trolling for a seconder. If Chair Wang could second. Thank you. I'll spare all the whereases. Thank you, Councillor. And I'll jump right to the proposed action, just with the following framing. I think there's an acknowledgement at all levels of government. It may not be accompanied by action, that we are in an acute housing crisis across the country. This term of council, certainly we have been laser focused on the 5% perhaps of that is publicly funded. And I think we should all be very proud of those accomplishments and that focus. But we've also acknowledged a reality in that at least in excess of 90% of our housing is, we rely on the private sector to provide that. And just mathematics would tell us that we cannot take a bite out of this crisis in the absence of doing all that we can to facilitate good development and focusing on that 90%. Therefore, be it resolved that the Planning and Economic Development and Public Works staff be requested to develop an action plan to improve the timeliness, efficiency, customer service, and access navigation of the development approvals and building permit processes to facilitate the construction of new housing supply. 2, that this action be informed by stakeholder participation from the development industry and other community stakeholders tasked with an assessment of lessons learned from the All for One Bloomberg pilot and other municipal best practices with terms of reference determined by the mayor and city manager. 3, that the mayor of Hamilton and the city manager be requested to report back to this committee with information on these said terms and stakeholder membership by Q2 of this year. 4, that the scope of this review and action plan include but not be limited to A, the formal consultation process and completed application requirements, the site plan control process, the subdivision process, engineering reviews, conditional building permits. F, a review of the number and type of submissions required, including consultant reports, plans, and studies that are required by the city through the planning approval process and the material impact on project outcomes. G, an assessment of Hamilton's current official plan and zoning frameworks in terms of council's commitment to continuous improvement in an effort to get housing built. 5, that planning and economic development staff be requested to compile and report on housing activity as part of the division's annual market and land supply monitoring report, including but not limited to the number of planning approvals issued for new low-density, mid-rise, and high-density units and their locations in Hamilton, the number of building permits issued for same. C, the average unit supply, average size of units. D, the achieved timelines for housing application and permit approvals and how these timelines compare with neighboring municipalities. C, that future annual reports on housing activity include any additional KPIs identified by the forthcoming work of the task force on the development approvals and building permit process. In addition to my opening framework, I think this council previously, or my colleague who typically sits here, put forward a motion that underscored the importance of continuous improvement. I believed it was passed unanimously. I just believe that this is an opportunity for us to bring some prioritization to that. I think it is an opportunity for us to celebrate, encourage, prioritize that in relation to the housing approval process. It's to acknowledge the hard work that our staff have already done, to say that is valued, it's necessary, such that we want to be intentional. And it's also, I think, intended to uphold a clear appreciation of measurement of how how much is getting built and how much we're perhaps not being able to be successful in that regard. I don't think, Chair Wang, that there's any public value in interest served when we add unnecessary cost and time to housing supply. So with that in mind, I encourage my colleagues to support the motion, and I'll do my very best to try and answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor McMeekin, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair Wang. I want to speak in support of the motion. Obviously, I've been doing a little bit of sleuthing with builders and other municipalities, given some of the contacts that historically are still in place, only to discover that we have in the opinion of some distance to travel yet to be as fulsome in terms of our collaboration with this important sector, which just happens to be in very, very difficult waters at the moment. We have heard several almost tearful appeals from the West Hamilton home builders. Mike Collins has been here before us, and I always almost feel bad about asking him questions, because every time I have breakfast or lunch or a coffee with him, he's just beside himself in terms of some of the barriers, natural and person-made. We have a lot to learn from maybe not a lot to learn. We have some things to learn from municipalities that have, based on their circumstances, stepped up and tried to find a way to re-articulate the vision of the role and function of the development industry. It's not an easy task, and there are all kinds of cautions, particularly around climate change and some of the things we as a horseshoe hold precious. But you know what? It's not enough just to muse about those or opine, as one of my colleagues might say. We need to dig in and dig down and make sure we're connecting. We talked about that several times around this table. How do we best connect? And there are ways that we can do that that need to be explored. Councillor Wilson used the word intentional. I think there's real substance in trying to be intentional about finding better ways forward if they're available. And I've often said, and you've heard me say, none of us is as smart as all of us. You know, if there are people out there in other adjacent municipalities and within our own that have wise counsel, let's invite that. Someone said to me, someone used to me the other day, she said, Ted, you're getting pretty old. If you get any wisdom to dispense, you better dispense it soon. And I thought, well, that was kind of cryptic. So I came to the meeting today thinking, well, maybe I should speak up on this issue. I think there's wisdom in the motion that's being presented by my colleague. And I don't think any of us are fearful of embracing wisdom. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McMeekin. On now to Councillor Kassar, please.
Thank you, Chair Wang. Also would like to speak in strong favor of the motion, just on a couple items. First of all, we know that staff do the lion's share of the work on development applications. Certain ones come here for us to deliberate, but they're doing most of the work and they have to follow provincial legislation and direction and policy from council. So it really rests with us to make sure things are as efficient as possible. And I think this is an excellent motion that will dig into that and help us do a lot better and in the spirit of continuous improvement and in an environment where it's very much needed. And secondly, to the elements of measurement that are referred to in the motion, coming from the private sector, one of the biggest challenges I noticed was the disparity between a for-profit private sector company that is focused weekly, monthly on metrics. We're just not at that level here at the city, both on private housing and public housing. In terms of targets, they're not, I'm sure they exist, but they're not front and center. They're not necessarily driving behavior in a positive way nearly as much as they could. So I'm really looking forward to that part of this motion, but support all of it and we'll definitely be voting yes.
Excellent, thank you. Any other speakers on this? Councillor Kassar, could you take the chair?
Go ahead.
I am highly, highly supportive of this motion. And just for committee's knowledge, Councillor Maureen Wilson and Councillor Kassar and I sit on the Open for Business subcommittee, where the last subcommittee, we also asked a very similar question, but around the customer journey. So seeing as this motion is on our back-end processes and how we do things internally and how do we make them more efficient, we have also asked staff to look at it from a customer's perspective and get real data on how the customer perceives our processes and how long it might take from their perspective, but also what is the customer service aspect of it. So I think that those two pieces of body of work will likely come together at some point, but just to let committee know that that work on the customer side and that customer lens is also happening, so beyond what's happening internally. So I just wanted to just add that for additional color, that I think that when it comes to customer service, this council and this committee is highly focused on what does customer service look like and ensure that we are working collaboratively and really well with our private sector partners. Thank you. I will take the chair back then. Seeing as there are no other speakers, and okay, thank you. And then receive the correspondence? Okay, yeah, because I was like, oh, okay. Thank you, Lisa. Clerk Kelsey. Okay, so let's have the vote electronically, please. And the vote is up. Counselor Francis, are you still around? Closed it already. So that motion has carried 9-0. Thank you. We are now moving on to receiving the written submission. So may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the written submission? Counselor Maureen Wilson, I'll second that one. And then I need a hand vote for the written submission, please. And that is everyone. Thank you very much. We are now moving on to notices of motion. This is for 11.1 feasibility of permitting chickens and roosters within the settlement residential S1 zone. Councillor Cassar, could you please present your notice of motion?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wang, and this will stay a notice until the next cycle. The resolution here is to ask Animal Services, municipal law enforcement, and planning staff to explore the feasibility of permitting chickens and roosters as permitted agricultural uses within settlement S1 residential zone areas and report back to Planning Committee by the end of this year, Q4. Just a brief comment. I think many of us, including rural residents and settlements, would think that rural areas can have chickens in their backyards. In fact, the zoning in settlement areas, Jerseyville would be an example, it is not permitted, yet keeping chickens has been in practice. So a number of residents brought that to my attention, and the action here is to direct staff to investigate making that allowed, because those residents did get notices to comply, and this was the step to figure out what the next, or can we make this permanent, or are the reasons why it shouldn't be allowed. So we'll leave it there for now.
So it's a notice today, and it'll be on our next planning cycle as a full motion, so we'll have discussion and debate at that time on this one. So 11.2 is the Hamilton Heritage Property Grant Program application criteria exception for the property municipally addressed as 2295 Troy Road, Flamborough. Councillor Cassar, could you please present your notice of motion, please?
Thank you again, Chair Wang, and also this will stay a motion. And as I alluded to in the report earlier on the agenda about the Troy Women's Institute, this motion, when presented, will direct staff to accept a property grant application for this property, currently not within the geographic area where these heritage grants are allowed. However, they will ask staff to consider that and some other things related to that, but we'll stay a notice for now for the public and committee members to consider.
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any other notices of motion? All right. Sounds awesome. So as per our roadmap, we are going into private and confidential. However, I have asked GM Robichaud to give us an update because there's been a lot of moving pieces and a lot going on. And so I thought maybe we'll ask him to give us an update right now and then before we go into private and confidential. GM?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Steve Robichaud, Acting General Manager, Planning and Economic Development Department. After discussing with the chair and with staff, I felt it was appropriate to provide Planning Committee with an update of some of the roadmap moving forward for the balance of 2025, some of the key initiatives and when we anticipate those will be coming forward. So I will be sending out an email following up because I know it's going to be a lot of information. In terms of the April Planning Committee meetings, we will be looking at bringing forward staff reports relating to the finalizing the urban boundary expansion framework and a recommendation with the associated official plan amendment. For the Fruitland Winona Service Secondary Plan Block 1 area, we will be bringing forward a report on the results of public consultation as to what we heard to date in response to Council's direction last December to engage with all landowners and report back what we heard prior to bringing forward the final block servicing strategy for Council adoption. Staff have been working on the medium density residential zoning, and we will be bringing forward the results of public consultation to April based on what we heard and identifying areas for possible changes and consideration. And there'll be a follow-up report relating to the actual zoning itself, as well as the green development standards. As you may recall, committee directed us to work with the advisory committee and as well as some other stakeholders. So we will be reporting back on the results of that public consultation, as well as either through planning committee or GIC, the implementation program. relating to that. And then growth management staff are bringing forward an update to our municipal addressing and street naming process to provide a little bit more clarity and certainty around that. We anticipate that in May, we will be coming forward with the draft OPA and framework relating to the major transit station areas and an inclusionary zoning framework as a result of the consultation and the consultant reports as to how we proceed with the MTSAs, as well as staff are working on a report relating to the collapse and demolition of the buildings at 18 to 28 King Street. So there has been a external professional engineer was retained to provide a review of some of the reports. So originally we were hoping to bring that report forward in April, but we wanted just to get that consultant's independent review in. So that'll be the first of 2 reports relating to the building collapses in the Gore. In June, we are going to be scheduling, we have scheduled tentatively a special planning committee meeting on June 25th to deal with 2 urban boundary expansion OPA applications. We have received and deemed complete the application for Whitechurch area, and I believe we are in the process of deeming complete and sending out notice for the Elfrida OPA. So a special planning committee meeting is being coordinated on June 25th with the anticipation that there will be a special council meeting immediately to follow in order that committee and council can then ratify the decision in order to meet the Planning Act 120-day timelines as it relates to OPAs. Staff are also working for the regular June Planning Committee meeting to report back on the update to the zoning for Upper James. You may recall we had proposed some draft zoning. We've been out having public consultation and feedback, so we will be reporting back on changes to some of the zoning for portions of Upper James. And finally, the planning group have been looking at how we can give notice of applications, and one of the key things that we've been working on and want to bring forward in June relates to public notices, in particular the signage that's erected on properties and how we can make it a more user-friendly, customer-oriented sign. It's very text-heavy. It doesn't really catch people's attention. So and also if there's opportunities to use technology, i.e. like a QR code so that people can get a hyperlink to our website so they can download more information pertaining to what those public notices are. And then the final big policy initiative relates to the conformity exercise for our employment areas in response to the changes to the Planning Act and the PPS. So we are doing a review to make a determination, are there lands that need to be either removed from the employment area designation because they are essentially a commercial use, like a restaurant, and then what does that mean for our overall land supply in dealing with that? But that is sort of the legislative agenda that we've sort of laid out going forward for the balance of 2025. And there's a couple other projects I'm sure that will pop up along the way. So that is one of the key initiatives that we are working on in dealing with that. If I can have committee's indulgence, normally I would not speak about a building permit matter for a single detached dwelling, but there's been a fair amount of public interest in a single detached dwelling that is currently being constructed at 786 Stone Church. So that's near Stone Church and Omni Drive in the sort of the Ancaster Hamilton area. And there's been a lot of questions from the public. So I just wanted to, for the public's benefit, just provide some clarification. As a result of changes the province made to the Planning Act, they removed the city's ability to place these lands under site plan control or to continue with the site plan control provisions that we had for a single detached dwelling. So there was no, in accordance with the Planning Act changes, the city cannot and did not require that this property go through a site plan process. Instead, they would go straight to a building permit. The Hamilton Conservation Authority was involved, and the Hamilton Conservation Authority was determined that the location of the dwelling and the septic bed was outside of their regulated area, so no permits were required from the Conservation Authority for the construction of a single detached dwelling and associated septic field. So that meant that the applicants just came in for a building permit, and building division staff did do a complete review of the zoning review, and they determined that the property is zoned A in the former town of Ancaster zoning bylaw, and a single detached dwelling in the location where it is proposed and under construction is a permitted use. So subject to them meeting the Ontario Building Code and any other applicable law, the applicant is entitled to a building permit to construct a new single detached dwelling in the location of the property that permits the use. And that is what the building permit was issued for, a single detached dwelling in accordance with the zoning bylaw. Final element is staff in both transportation planning and public works were involved in terms of dealing with the property owner in the driveway location and ensuring that that new driveway location, both where it is proposed and the method of construction and how it gets installed, meets all city guidelines and is being done in a safe fashion. So Public Works staff and transportation staff have reviewed that driveway location, and Public Works staff are taking the lead in working with the property owner to ensure that the driveway location as proposed is in a safe location. The method of construction in terms of how they're removing any guardrails, curb cuts, construction activity is all being done in accordance with city practices and policies, and having ongoing dialogue with the applicant or the homeowner, the future homeowner, in terms of achieving that. So I just want, hopefully that clarifies for the public record. The proponent of the new single detached dwelling is following all municipal policies and procedures, and what they are proposing on the property is in accordance with all municipal policies and procedures. Because it is only for a single detached dwelling, it does not normally, there's no requirement to give public notice. There are no variances required. There are no consent applications required. A building permit, we don't notify generally when someone is applying for a building permit, nor do we notify the abutting landowners if someone is applying for a driveway approach permit or a curb cut permit. And because there were no variances required or site plan required, it does not get populated onto our development application layer. So that's what there was nothing different done in terms of the treatment of this property. It is following the normal process relating to an issuance of a building permit with the associated driveway permit. So I just wanted to clarify that because over the last couple of weeks, there have been a lot of comments and questions. Finally, and building on the motion that was passed earlier regarding looking at our planning processes, as I did indicate last week at the Open for Business Subcommittee, staff were reviewing the home builders report, and there was some media interest. And one of the things I wanted to make a distinction on was there are two sort of planning frameworks we operate now in Ontario, pre-Bill 109 and post-Bill 109. So when we talk about generally, when we look at applications, on average, I think in 2024, it took 665 days to get an OPA in the zoning application to Planning Committee. How that was sort of when you factor in applications that are pre-Bill 109. When you look at today's agenda, we had a rezoning, the one on Carrera Drive, that got to Planning Committee in 70 days. And the OPA for King Street got to Planning Committee in, I think, 120 days, 111 days. And what we are seeing is there is a fundamental shift, and we indicated because council, even though the province repealed the fee refund provisions, it was council's position based on staff's recommendation was we continue to try to meet those performance targets. So what we are seeing now is on average an OPA took between 115 to 150 days in 23-24 in terms of basically we're relying on the applicants. Zoning applications we're processing in 118 to 125 days on average. If you take the median to deal with some of the outliers, those average numbers, that number actually drops. So we are meeting or exceeding, as was presented at the Open for Business Subcommittee, those provincial time targets of 120 days for an OPA and 90 days for a zoning application. And as it relates to site plans, the preliminary information is to get conditional approval, it's 47 days, and then it's up to the applicant how quickly those conditions get cleared. But the median number of days, or the average number of days to get final approval of the site plan once conditional approval has been issued is 219 days. So that means that somebody coming in for a site plan application today, they should be in a position where they are able to obtain building permits within 250 days. And that's always what's important. When can I get a building permit? As a leadership group, we have been discussing knowing, as good as we're doing, we can always do better and looking for those opportunities to do better. So for example, growth management staff are leading an update to our subdivision agreement. So that's one of the big issues that a lot of builders have is how long does it take to get through that subdivision process? What does the subdivision agreement is? So there will be some direct engagement with the development industry around the subdivision agreement because I think that is one area that we can focus on because collectively, myself and Director Hannah, we agree that the subdivision agreement isn't working in its current form. We've been living with it for about 20 years, but I think it's time, it needs an update. It has been periodically updated. So that's going to be one of the major areas of focus that growth management staff are dealing with, as well as ongoing dialogue with the development industry around our guidelines and our engineering standards, and can we do better on that? And then the other area, I forgot to put it on the list, is I've asked Ms. Fayback and her team to look at our holding removal process because we are hearing complaints. It's a high fee. It can take a long time. So can we look at coming back with an update to the holding? So whether through Open for Business or back to Planning Committee, we will be reporting on sort of changing the holding removal process and looking at alternative fee structures, because that's one of the complaints that we've been hearing from the industry going forward. So I just wanted to, I haven't given an update in a while, so that's a lot of stuff. I will be sending out a quick email to all the members of committee on both the legislative agenda, some of the process reform steps that we're doing, as well as working with PW staff. I think they've already provided an update in terms of to some members of council relating to that single family dwelling that's under construction on Stone Shirt. So thank you very much. I appreciate committee's indulgence.
Thank you, GM. I suppose I'll just open it up if there's any questions on that very lengthy, but we're going to try and keep this short though, right? So short. Councillor McMeekin?
I can be short, Chair. Thanks for that. That was helpful. Have you had conversations with the various building groups recently, reciting what you just said there and getting their feedback on it?
Through Madam Chairman, I will be following up. The team has been pulling this information together. Some of it has to be manual, but we will be sharing our performance and getting feedback. Although in terms of some of the other initiatives, we have that ongoing through the Development Industry Liaison Group or just through reaching out to the various key stakeholders, ongoing dialogue, just so that they're aware, so we can get their feedback and that they are aware of what is coming forward. Thank you.
Councillor?
This industry's on the verge of being crippled, and they're screaming for help in terms of process enhancements, whatever they are. I keep assuring them quite confidently that our staff are entirely capable of working with you to make sure that happens. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing as there are no more, I'm going to open it up to the floor if there's any other business that anybody would like to bring up currently. Councillor. So Councillor Cassar, was yours? Oh, it was addressed? Okay, excellent. All right. Okay, thank you. Let us move on to private and confidential. At this point, let's deal with the closed session minutes. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the February 25th, 2025 closed session minutes as presented and that they remain confidential? Councillor Kretsch and Councillor Cassar. And this is an e-scribe vote, please. Vote is up. Welcome, Councillor Danko, joining us at the party. And that vote carries 10-0. Thank you. Now, we do have several items, 12.2 and 12.3. So, committee, do you wish to go into closed session for this? Yes. All right. May I please have a mover and a seconder to move into closed session for items 12.2 and 12.3 pursuant to section 9.3, subsections E, F, and K of the city's procedural bylaw 21-021 as amended, and section 2392, subsections E, F, and K of the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. Councillor Maureen Wilson and Councillor Cassar. E-scribe vote, please. And the vote is up. And Councillor Paul says yes. Councillor Tadison's a thumbs up. Okay, and that's carried 10-0, so we've, because we didn't capture Councillor Tadison's. Okay, so members of the public, this meeting will continue following the closed session portion of the meeting. When you see members of the committee rejoining the meeting, committee will wait up to 5 minutes upon reconvening in open session before proceeding with the meeting to provide members of the public and the media time to return. Thank you. All right, committee members, you are reminded to return back to the open section of eScribe in order to request to speak and vote, and we are now back in open. So speaking to 12.2, which is LS 25007, report on the feasibility of adoption and enforcement of a bylaw to prohibit protests at places of worship and their facilities. So I think that we can do the mover and seconder to get the report on the floor. And then do the directions after? Okay, so may I please have a mover and a seconder to approve A, that report LS 25007 be received and remain confidential, Councillor Maureen Wilson and Councillor Beatty. And is that a electronic vote or a? It'll be an electronic vote, please. The vote is up. And that vote carries 9-0. I think that we do have direction following along with this. Oh, Councillor Tattison's a yes. So we do have direction. So clerk, is that something that we just put on screen, or what's the best course of action here? Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I would like to offer some direction, please, and thank you. That staff be requested to report back with a bylaw to prohibit protests at places of worship, and that they engage with Hamilton Police Service and municipal law enforcement in their due diligence, and appropriate city staff to afford online comment on the said bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And I think that your seconder is Councillor Beatty.
Be wonderful, but I so seconded by
Councillor Beatty has agreed to second. I will fast forward to, okay. So we have a motion that has been moved and seconded. Does committee need to see that online or on the screen? Yes. And then we do have comments on this. I think Councillor Alex Wilson, please. Well, do you want to see that first?
I was mostly asking to see it. I will have some comments potentially in the debate, but I think as a first step, I'd love to just see what we're talking about.
Yes, that sounds really good. So give us a second. Okay. So clerks are just going to make that a little bit bigger. That legal staff be directed to report back with a draft bylaw with internal in consultation with HPS and MLE, so Hamilton Police Services and Municipal Law Enforcement and Office of the Mayor, and with public consultation for online comment. That staff be directed. Okay. We're just wordsmithing here, so just give us a second. It's there. It stopped typing. Facilitated through, was it community engagement? Oh, sorry. Through online comment or just comment? Okay. Okay. All right. I think that we've done with the wordsmithing. I'd like to recognize Councillor Alex Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Although I understand and appreciate where this motion's coming from, I don't support this approach to creating community safety, something that I think we're united as a council around as being a goal. I can understand the value in wanting a protective area around a place of worship. I think there are extreme risks that come with this type of action, namely the use of discretion by those enforcing it. So whether those be bylaw officers, HPS officers on the ground, when a place of worship is using their space as an event space, rented out for money to another community group, and there's a protest occurring with respect to the rentee of that space, are they still covered by these provisions? How does that work out? I think there's a question that exists for me, which is if there's a specific type of behavior that is causing someone to feel unsafe at their place of worship, that behavior should not be tolerated in our city, 100%. But that behavior should not be tolerated in our city. It shouldn't be tolerated 51, 101, 102 meters away. If there's something that is causing harm to individuals and it's creating a safety situation, absolutely, we need to be addressing that as a community. I don't know that putting up kind of an imaginary bubble around places of worship actually achieves that safety. I worry that the cost of putting in those resources, the having someone respond on the scene, intervene, kind of make those judgment calls, does little to actually get us to the culture where we're trying to get, which is a place where hate of any form is unwelcome in our city, where all people, regardless of how they're celebrating, what they're worshiping, their charter rights to worship are respected. Charter rights to assembly are also exist. And I think I don't believe that this is the right approach to create the community safety that I think we're all committed to. And we all know that we need in our community. I remain concerned with how this has played out in other jurisdictions. And so for those reasons, not supportive of this approach, but appreciate some of the intentions and where we're going or where we're trying to get.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments on this particular motion at this time? Councillor McMeekin, please.
Yes, thanks very much. I want to acknowledge that this is an important issue. It's one that's certainly going to initiate some interesting discussion and debate. But I'm very prepared, given the flexibility that the original presenter of this motion has indicated, to open up the process to walk that journey and to see. I think we have a responsibility to walk the walk before we maybe talk the talk and make decisions. So I will support the motion without reservation, because I think the issue itself is of critical importance to us. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing as there are no other speakers on the speakers list, I know I keep like slowing down. Councillor Crutch, please.
Okay, just for public consumption, I completely agree with Councillor Alex Wilson. Just wanted to echo those comments. I want to also share that I think one of the decisions we're making when we implement a bylaw is whether we think that the city's additional measure taking, so we're taking additional measures as a city on top of what already exists through the Hamilton Police Service to further identify and clarify this. I think as an important decision for municipalities to make. I don't think, again, this is the right approach, having a bylaw to do this. I think that there are already existing services in our city that can do this. I think also we still need to fund the community and safety and well-being plan, right? And so that's part of, I think, the challenge we face right now is there are many gaps in our community when it comes to community safety. I know other motions are afoot right now to try and address those. I think those types of approaches will be better at trying to address things like this than this kind of bylaw. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cretch. Looking at the list, and again, I have slowed right down to 0.5 speed. No? Okay, cool, awesome. So seeing as there are no more speakers on this particular motion, may I have the vote, please, electronically? And the vote is up. And that vote carries 7-2. Thank you. We are now moving on to 12.3, which is LS 25010, update on planning appeals and mediation and settlement discussions before the Ontario Land Tribunal. So may I please have a mover and a seconder to approve A, that report LS 25010, including Appendix A, be received and remain confidential. Councillor Cretch and Councillor Cassar, and I think that's also an electronic vote. Comments? I think we're good. All right, vote is up. And Councillor Townsend's a yes. That vote carries 9-0. Seeing as there are no further business, we are adjourned at 12:25 p.m. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.